they don't want to do it. So you've got to figure out a way to.
Hey, welcome. I'm Jared Boyles. Man, I'm so happy to have you on the Zoom call with me. Just for those of you who don't know, Jared Boyles was my first real mentor in retail. My first real mentor in retail, and I will tell you that he didn't hire me. He had somebody else hire me, but he took me and developed me from just about that big and just grew me into something that's unstoppable, baby, right? But one of the first things I remember about Jared Boyles is I was one of his overnight stalkers. I'm over there, I'm stalking, and I'm at the end of the night, and I'm zoning up the cereal aisle, and this man walks over and he says, Adams, that's the best zone I've ever seen on that cereal aisle in my whole career. Now, lying or not lying, I don't really care. That comment took me, that compliment took me forever. Like I carry that. I'm talking about it today, right? 12 years later, I'm talking about it. So, Jared, give us a little bit about your background in leadership and actually how you got started in retail, and not just as a retail manager, but how you got started in retail, and tell some of that story, because that is rather interesting. You almost got fired a couple times. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so it is interesting. I started in retail. When I was in high school, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I started as a cart pusher when I was in the 10th grade. Part time in the 10th grade, and then 11th and 12th grade, and I was like one of the only kids in my class that actually worked. Most of the other ones didn't work, but I took a part-time job at Walmart, which is where my mother worked. She was a customer service manager, and I just worked part-time usually it was after school or after practice, and I played every sport there was, captain of the football team, captain of the basketball team, baseball, everything, every sport you could play, I played. And then, of course, after that was over, I would go work until, 10, 11 o'clock pushing buggies at Walmart, which was, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was illegal, because I don't think I should have been working past, 10 o'clock. But that's neither here nor there. I worked a lot, and then eventually went full time there. But I was the worst employee ever. I was the most just, what's the best word to describe it? You just could not depend on me for anything, because I didn't tell my boss when I had a track meet coming up. I didn't tell him when I had a baseball tournament. It was like, oh, by the way, my boss's name at the time was Daniel. So, by the way, Daniel, I can't come in Saturday because I have a track meet. He's like, Jared, it's Friday. If you told me this 2 weeks ago, maybe I could have had someone fill your position. So I was just not the most dependable person when it comes to stuff like that. So that's how my career started. And this manager gave me chances after chances, and oh yeah, I should have been fired 10 times over for just that kind of stuff. But I will say this: when I actually showed up to work, it was all work, it was all business, and that was actually something I did very, very well. It was just getting to work was my biggest struggle early on, balancing school and that kind of stuff. So that's where I started. After being with Walmart for 5 years, I was at a point in my life where I was going to school at Texas A&M Commerce, and I was thinking, everywhere I was trying to apply for a job, they were starting me off at $35,000 or lower in most cases, because I grew up in Northeast Texas. Or I could stay at Walmart and try to get into entry-level management, and they were paying $51,500, and I already had 5 years with them. So I'm like, okay, let's do the math there. And I decided to stay, and it wasn't until 2004 that I actually got serious. So I'd already had 5 years with the company. How I made it those 5 years, I don't know, but I'd already had 5 years in. I finally got serious and like, you know what, I'm going to make this a career. And in 2004, that's when I just kind of said, okay, it's time to get serious. And I got serious, and I immediately relocated to DFW to Bedford because there was no growth opportunity where I was at. I mean, that store I was at, people had been there for 20 and 30 years, and I had to go somewhere where there was a little bit more opportunity. So I went to Bedford, transferred to a store there, and just was a department manager, and just tried to move up. And because I knew that once I became a salary member of management, my life would change because the money would change, and it would change, dramatically. So my goal was, how can I go from an hourly to a salary member of management? I mean, I was riding my bike to work because I didn't have enough gas to put in my car to drive it to work. So I was riding my bike 7 miles one way, 7 miles the other. And what I learned really early on that was funny is you sweat a lot riding a bike to work. So my first day riding a bike, I showed up and I'm just soaking, just dripping with sweat. I had my shirt, my tie on, and I had to go to the bathroom and take my shirt off and dry it under the hand dryer for, long enough to where I would look like I didn't just run a marathon coming to work. And I did that for a while. Ate one meal a day because that's all I could afford, because I had a 1-bedroom apartment that I was, living by myself on. So my original goal was, I've got to get from hourly to salary. And how do you do that? I mean, you do exactly what your boss tells you to do, and you keep doing it, and you do it as fast as you can. And you try to move up as fast as you can. And then you also have to hold your boss accountable for holding up their end of the bargain. Because, the boss would say, well, you do this, you'll get promoted. You do this, you'll get promoted. And when you do all those things and you're not promoted, you have to stand up and say, hey, let's go back to our original conversation, because I've done X, Y, and Z. So what's next? And then eventually it'll happen. And, I was promoted, and it was life-changing. I could actually, I had a car, I drove it to work, and I had money to survive on. And then from there, you just have that burning desire to move up as fast as you can and as high as you can. And you try to, or for me, it was understanding what my level or what my capacity to lead was. Like, how high can I lead? Because I don't think I could be the president of the United States. I don't think I could, necessarily, go and run an entire airline, but I do have a capacity to lead at a certain level. And my goal was to figure out what is that level and how fast can I get there.
Right.
And to me, for the majority of my career, that was a district manager level. I wanted to run multiple units, and that's what drove me the majority of my Walmart career until I hit that level. And it wasn't until I was recruited to Bed Bath & Beyond, and when I realized that, I can actually go up a couple more levels and still lead at that capacity, when I didn't realize that I even could early on. So
your journey this whole time has been so awe-inspiring. You did it relatively quickly, very, like you said, a very short period of time, and not just with one company, but then with another company. Really, your success secrets, the things that have driven you to be ultra successful. I kind of want to get into that a little bit, because you've been successful at everything that you touched so far. Everything you touch, you've done a fantastic job, because you and I have stayed in contact and in touch and talking about the accomplishments that you have. But what is it? What if you could put your finger on maybe your top 3 things that really took you from being a cart pusher to now being a department manager, and then that drove you to be a salaried member of management? You said doing whatever your boss tells you to do, yes. Doing it as fast as you can get it done for them, yes. But what other qualities did you find that you had to start to develop in order to launch your career to the next level? Like, how did you personally develop yourself in order to go to that next level?
Wow, that's a tough one. I mean, obviously, everything that we do begins and ends with leadership. So for me, it was understanding how I can take what I already know and apply it to my current situation, but learn as much as I can in the process. Because I was I mean, I feel like to a certain extent, I've always been a leader, but the very first thing that comes to mind when I think of my own leadership is probably listening, because I had an associate tell me, and this hasn't actually wasn't that long ago. This was probably only 2 years ago, where one of my associates told me, "Man, you come up with some really good ideas." And I had to tell this person, well, it wasn't really my idea. It was this person's idea or that person's idea. And so I think a lot of it has to do with listening, because as a leader, you have the ability to let's say you supervise 50 people, or let's say it's 400. I mean, let's say you're running a Walmart store and it's 400 people. I mean, that's 400 different ideas that can be given to you on a daily basis or a weekly basis. And I think one of the critical parts of leadership is listening to what everyone has to say and then using that to come up with the best decision. So, I mean, how did I move up, from a department manager or an assistant manager? Man, yeah, I had an idea to do things every now and then, but most of the time it was using the resources that I had to come up with what would ultimately be the best solution to whatever the problem was. And eventually you solve enough problems and solve enough problems, then you're on to something else. So I think if I had to pick number one, it would be just listening. I mean, I've been in management meetings where I literally didn't say anything for 30 minutes. And then once everyone in the room was exhausted and didn't have anything else to say, then I would come in and I would weigh everything that they said, and then I would give them my opinion. And a lot of times, it would be their suggestion, but sometimes I would thought everything they said and I would use mine, because mine still ultimately was the best solution. But I've even had managers above me say, "Why did you not step in and say something?" Well, because I want to hear what everyone has to say first before I come in and make a decision. Because if I start talking, nobody else is going to talk. I mean, without, just continuing to nail this one, I think this listening would be probably the one of the biggest things that I use. You have to have a goal. So, for me, like I said, getting to a district manager level was always my goal. And it sounds weird when I say it out loud why that was my goal, but I'll tell you why it was my goal. Because the first district manager I ever met, I remember thinking after that conversation, that guy's a district manager? Oh my gosh, I can do that. You know, you're like, you're listening to what they're saying, you're looking at what they're doing, they're walking your store, and you're like, that's it? That's all this person's bringing to the table? I mean, everything that person just said, I know everything that they just brought up. So I can be a district manager. So once you realize that some of these positions aren't that far-fetched that what you originally thought, oh my God, I can never be a store manager when you're pushing carts. Well, then you start realizing, well, yeah, you actually can, but there's some stuff that you're gonna have to pick up on the way to develop yourself, into that position. Number three for me would probably be just knowing how to inspire whatever your audience is, because no one's going to do crap for you if you can't inspire them. I've never been the person that everyone's hated. I've never been the person that just everyone's just love, beyond all get out. But I've had people tell me that I've ripped them to shreds for doing something bad, but they respected me for it because of the way that I, told them about it. So I think I was always just as quick to congratulate someone for doing something good, but just as quick for telling someone very transparently when they were doing something that was wrong, or just wasn't policy, or just frankly was terrible. So I think I've always been an open book when it comes to that. But I was always able to inspire people to do their best, and each individual takes something different. There might be one person that has to be praised every 5 seconds for doing every little thing. If that's what I have to do to get them to do those every little things, then okay, I'm going to do that. But there may be a person that when you try to give them kudos, they just roll their eyes and they don't ever want to hear it. Well, okay, then I may have to tailor my style a little bit differently towards that person. But it's not going to take me very long to figure out what it is I have to do to get them to work for me. And once I can figure that part out, then it's golden, then you're good. But sometimes it takes a little bit to learn that part of it.
Jared, that is fantastic. You have given a novel of information, and I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on. And my audience will be listening to this for years to come. I just made you immortal, man. This is fantastic.
Let me apologize in advance to your audience.